As part of our live Q&A series, we brought in group practice owners, and we begin this recording with Gina Aguayo, one of our group practice owners, sharing about her experience in working with her husband in her business. Stay tuned for more amazing questions and great shares from our community.
The best business decision for my business was to pull my husband out of it. And took a long time to get there, but I ultimately did. And it has done wonders for our relationship. We're not always at odds about what's going on in the business anymore. It's not coming home. It's not affecting our interactions together. It's not affecting our closeness anymore because he's not involved in it. He doesn't get to have a say. Like, he listens to me when I complain because I have a group practice. So people management occasionally gets to me and I will complain and he is supportive. But when it comes to the actual business decisions, they're mine. And the people that I choose to speak to about them are my choices as well. And he may not be one of those people all the time. And it was really hard to get to a place to make that decision because I felt like, well, he supported me through this whole thing, right? Like he was there as I built everything and he deserves to be part of this. And there was a guilt piece. And it finally boiled down to, this is not doing anything good for our relationship. And if I value our relationship, then I need to stop having him be part of the business. So I really appreciate what Miranda and Kelly are saying around our partners are our partners, but they're not necessarily our business partners.
Yes.
Yeah. And it can be hard, like really, truly. And I know, like there's a video on I think on all of our business school pages that someone recorded with their spouse, where the spouse was like, why do you need to join this business school thing? Like, this is this is a lot of money. Like, I don't even know. And then afterwards, like they'd be at a party and then someone would be like, yeah, I'm thinking about starting a private practice. And and she would be like, okay. And then he'd be jumping and being like, you need to join business school. The Zinni thing, like it's changed everything about her practice. And it's amazing. Like he's been the biggest cheerleader and supporter, but he didn't know. And I think there is something that happens in terms of our business building process too, of what Gina described is like getting into her intuition and trusting herself too, of like, oh, I can make really good decisions. I can figure this out. I can set boundaries in a loving way with my spouse for the betterment of the business and the betterment of our relationship. And like, I trust me. And that's a piece, right? It's not something that you would necessarily go in when we're working at an agency and we would go back and ask our spouse, like, is it okay for me to have an extra week of vacation that my agency gave me? Like, we wouldn't ask that question. That would seem ridiculous. May I take a raise for my agency job? Like, maybe we would ask if there was a change in something dramatic, but like, that's going to impact them. But like everything you're doing in your business is like there to support the bigger picture of things, right? Lisa, Beth is raising.
Oh yeah. Go ahead.
I know you got to go, or I have to go, but I just wanted to mention that to the new ones, get a battle buddy, really invest the time in finding one and developing that relationship. That was so key for me. And I've continued to get so much out of meeting twicely by video and checking in daily with my battle buddy. So I didn't hear anybody mention that, and I just wanted to plug that.
Thank you, Lisa Beth.
Beautiful, thank you.
Well, for those of you who are new to the Q&A, we've been going, this is now our third hour, and we are focused on practices that are successful, group practice owners, and we have some business schoolers here today to share their story. And you can post your questions in the chat. You're going to hear about their kind of path into creating this practice. And they're still on their path, by the way, that keeps growing and evolving. I show that Wanda James is here and Jennifer I never say it right, but if you want to speak, can you turn your video on? Because I'm not sure. And if there's any other business schooler that's in the successful group, raise your hand so we can see you. But
they're here to speak, because I know sometimes people are like, I'm just here for funsies, and other people are like, I'm here to speak. And so we want to make sure.
Let us know if we missed you. All right. for those of you who don't know us, we're going to do a little intro every time because I see new people jump in. I'm Kelly Higdon.
And I'm Miranda Palmer. We are both therapists, as well as business consultants. We're the creators of the Business School for Therapists. And we are all about changing this broken paradigm of what it means to be a therapist and, creating unsustainable workloads and unsustainable practices. And we want to make sure that people can create beautiful lives and that they realize, right, that there is so much opportunity in this work, that when you get to that successful place, that it's a beautiful thing with a lot of options in front of you. Group practice is one of them. Beyond the couch is another. Like, there's so many beautiful ways that you can grow and evolve over time to create something that you really love and that has a big impact on your clients, your world, and your relationships.
For those of you who are, maybe you've got the practice where you want it and you're like, what do I do now? Or I've been wanting a group practice. I want to know what that's like. Maybe you've seen other colleagues and you've wanted to pick their brain. Our business schoolers have taken the time to allow that for an hour out of their very packed schedules. I know this for a fact. And it's not just packed with work, it's packed with children and lives and plants and animals and all sorts of things. So this is them giving back. And I really, really want to say thank you for being here. I know it's a huge ask. And Sonila's here as well. Great. So Sonila will be joining us too. So I'll start off with Carrie Ann Greaves. You want to introduce yourself? Miranda, you asked the question. You format it better than me.
Yeah. So introduce you and your practice, what life was like before business school, and what group practice looks like today.
Hi, everyone. I'm Carrie Ann Greaves. I have a group practice in Wethersfield, Connecticut. Life before boot camp was starting out for me. I had been in agency world probably for like 15 years at that point. I was burnt out. I had just had a baby and I was on maternity leave before all the Facebook groups of boot camp and private practice stuff, just Googling like how to start a private practice. What do I do? What does space look like? And I found a space to sublet one day a week. And then I grew into an office suite within probably 6 months and was subletting to other therapists starting out because I was like, oh, I don't want to be in control of anybody. I don't want to run anything. I'm just going to keep them over here. And gradually took on some contractors as my practice filled up. And then I decided that, you know what, it's out of control now. Boot camp needs to get me back into gear and figure out, my practice was running me. And so I learned how to convert them all into employees. I kind of gained the reins with the help of Kelly and Miranda and built processes, and having processes in place and having their support was really helpful for me because then my business was growing with my life instead of it taking over my life. And I think that's really important to know, is that bootcamp is going to help you, establish those processes so that as you build your group is growing with you. It's not taking over your life. I currently have 8 therapists that work for me. I have 3 onboarding in the next couple of months, full-timers. And
oh my gosh.
Yeah. They are newly licensed people that have come on for full-time. And that is one thing, when I converted to employees, was I had to establish full-time, part-time. Last year we did that. And we lost some employees through the change of COVID and, hiring last year. But I will say that despite losing some of our long-term employees, our business still grew 7% last year. So we had less staff and more processes.
Thank
and
you.
also more income.
Thank you.
More profit and less stress.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful, I think this is the piece too. It's very easy when you are in the place of like success, whether that's solo or group, to simply look at the number of clients you're seeing, to see the number of employees, the size of your office space, and all of these other places. But like, what are the things that really matter? Being able to leave work at work, being able to get home to your kids, being able to like have a sustainable profit, to have the kind of workplace that you're delighted to be a part of, and so are your employees, right? Like all of these other things, to be able to take a vacation or to be able to be sick, to know that when your laptop craps out, because it will, it's not a big deal to replace it. Like these are all the things that are the metrics that really matter. And I think that, and that can be really scary when you've gotten to a certain place, right? Whether that's a gross income goal or a amount of people on your caseload, to like make a change, right? Brenda was talking about this a little bit earlier. Like I've created this system, I've created this machine that's like running me. To make a change can be really scary, but it really can be beautiful. We need to give ourselves permission to put everything on the table. This is something we talked about in the burnout training last Friday, that everything has to come on the table to see like what really makes sense, what really works.
So Neela, I see you here.
Hi.
Hello.
You want to share where you were when we first met and where you are now?
Oh my gosh. Where I was when we first met was really scrambling. When we met, I was probably a 10-year social worker at the time, graduated with my doctorate in psychology. Everyone was telling me, go and find yourself an internship and work for $20,000. That's the best thing you can do. And I just went the unorthodox route. Thank God for the two of you. You have no idea how many times I think of the two of you because you've like saved my life, not just me, but my kids, my partner. And the reason I say that is because I came across you guys. I made a leap of faith. And I like sharing this. I was actually on a link card at the time. I had a baby. My partner quit his job to take care of the baby. And I was like, should I make this investment? Like we don't have food to eat. And my husband was like, no way. You gotta go to like, let's find a job. I was like, no, I'm going to do it. And so I remember I hired you and I was like, let's get this started. I was scared, nervous, anxious, but 7 years later, okay.
Been that long.
7 years later, which actually I have not been so engaged with the community, but I constantly like either tap on some of the things or I think of the two of you or I ask a question here and there. And I am in tap, which has been extremely helpful. This is how my life looks now versus then. I have a beautiful group practice with people I love and we trust each other. We have fun. We go out from time to time. I go to Europe every year once a month for 1 month with the whole family, and I don't work, which is like I never in a million years in those 10 years before would have done. I have opened a nonprofit organization for an orphanage in my city back home. Mm-hmm. So we just got approved from the state of Illinois to that we are a nonprofit.
Congrats.
So that was a big deal. And my life at home here is like day and night. I mean, it looks like I don't stress. Of course, everybody stresses, but I am like, where was I and where am I? It's like two different planets. I mean, if it wasn't for your guidance and your expertise on organizing and giving resources, I would have not, our income as like from last year. I mean, we're making like almost $1 million as a group practice with 5 practitioners full-time, or actually 4 full-time. And so just to put things into perspective, they get a big cut. They're happy with their money. I am happy. We're, flowing here in Chicago. We're serving 3 other states now. I can go on how amazing this process has been. Has it been challenging? Yes, at times. There are times where I kind of like have to strap up and be like, what do we need? But I have all the informations I need in front of me with the two of you, and the asana and the boot camp and all of that. That my life has changed tremendously. I'm forever grateful.
So Neela, I'm so excited you got your nonprofit status too. I know that was a big effort.
Such a
and
big deal. Yeah. I mean,
Awesome.
to give back to my country and to give back to these little kids, I think I would have only done it in this way. I don't know if I could have ever helped as a social worker in a community mental health.
What an impact.
I think that when we talk about this a lot, there's a lot of therapists that are trying to create kind of a nonprofit mentality as part of their for-profit, their primary income. And they're trying to replicate what a nonprofit is doing with like a $5 million grant or a $10 million grant inside of their practice. And then they're struggling to put food on the table, or they're like struggling to like figure out how to do that. And yet when we create a sustainable business and a sustainable life, we leave time in our life to give back in beautiful ways. And whether that means volunteering for a nonprofit once a week or once a month, whether that means giving back financially, whether that means starting your own nonprofit, whatever that looks like in your life, we create space to do that out of the bounty and not out of this place of everyone's struggling. So we're all in the muck down in this place, and like it's not okay for anyone to like step up and go like this, I can't do this, like this hurts my heart, you know.
Gina,
Thank you.
I want to hear about you.
So, when I found boot camp, I was working probably 40 hours a week, 50 hours a week in my practice, and bringing home somewhere in the neighborhood of about $15,000 or $20,000, maybe. It took me a very long time to realize that no matter what I did with the model I was using, it wasn't going to work. Eventually it sunk in and I made the changes that needed to be made. And immediately I saw the differences in terms of my work schedule, my pay, my stress level, everything just got better. So I have a practice about 20 miles northwest of Boston. We went from a practice of, I think it was like 4 when I started working with boot camp, and now we are 13. Yeah, 13. That doesn't include me. And it's just been night and day. I bought a building in August, which was a huge deal, and ended up throwing me into a huge tailspin at the beginning of this fiscal year, such that we had a major financial loss, which was like, oh my God, I did all the things and I still can't make it work. And one of the things that's been great about boot camp and working with Kelly and Miranda is that they do support you throughout. So I was in this place of, that's it. I got to sell the building. I got to close the practice. I have to fire everybody. Like, I can't do this because there's no way I can recover from this. But I'd done all the things that I was supposed to do in order to know that I could afford to buy this building. And Miranda reached out and she was like, you did all the things. Like, this isn't about profitability. This is about cash flow, which isn't something I had thought of. So it's still a learning process, even umpteen years later.
And by the way, I realized, oh, we haven't done a great job of teaching cash flow. So now it's a lesson that's going into business school of like, we're going to make this super clear, or much more clear, especially for group practice owners. So it was like a message back to me of like, oh, let's do this better.
Well, I'm happy I helped. Put in perspective that I did all the things I was supposed to do. I did all the numbers. I knew all my numbers. I knew my profit. I knew everything. And yet it came back and it was bad. Like, we didn't even bring in enough money to cover our payroll, much less our expenses in January. In February, we had our best month ever. Bay-State's been open since 2014, and we're projected next month to do even better than February. So
can we just pause for a second? For any of you that are in that freak out mode, when you hold for a moment and you don't make big decisions with that feeling inside, and Carrie Ann's laughing because she also has been in the same place as Gina, and maybe even Sunil has been there. When you get above and you get a bigger view of it, usually it's turning. It's like, it's just part of anytime you pivot, like Carrie Ann, when you went from contractor to employee model, there's a crunch, and then and that's Gina. Like, you bought a building, there was stuff wrong with that building, and there was
Life. It's a
stuff
beautiful
happened.
historic building. Like
and stuff
there's
happened.
to
And
do.
then here you are having your best month ever.
Yeah.
Aren't you glad you didn't close it?
I did put it on the market.
Building, but not your practice.
Not the practice, just the building. And
the building's a kind of a, yeah.
So
But aren't you glad you didn't close your group practice?
So I went through every possible, I'm going to have to cut salaries. I'm going to have to cut staff. I'm going to need to, fire all the people. I'm going to have to start seeing 30 clients a week again, like all the things. Like, I did all the things. Right. And Miranda was like, breathe, just breathe. I breathed. I did add some clients, but I did breathe, and we're fine. I'm fine. It's fine. It's all fine. I did actually let go of a staff member, probably because it needed to happen anyway. And I just needed an excuse that was like easy. And that was good. And it's also given me perspective. Like, I was so used to things just working that I got a little lax in my own tendency to make sure everything's just doing the thing that's supposed to be doing. So it got me back to that place of, I need to take better care of what's going on and understanding what's going on more specifically. And in doing that, I think that's part of the reason why we're now doing so well. Like, we're really on top of things, whereas before we were just mostly on top of things. So it did have an awakening moment for me, but more than that, boot camp set the stage for, I knew what I needed to know before I made these major decisions. And so I had done all the planning. It should have worked. And why didn't it work? And it did work. It just didn't work the way I thought it was going to.
It didn't work on the exact timeline.
No.
There was a little bit of a whoa, but overarching, looking at the year, it's oh no, the profitability, the numbers are all there. It's just, here is this cash flow plate.
And I think it goes back to what we were speaking on last week during the Joy Rally in terms of that trauma response, how sometimes we have trauma responses in our businesses, and then we make decisions out of those trauma responses versus how do we get embodied, lower our cortisol, manage the energetic field around us so that we can make good decisions. Because I don't know, Sunila, Carrie Ann, are you at all resonating with Gina's moment of panic?
I don't know. How many times, Kelly, have I said to you, oh my God, someone's quitting, or I can't do this anymore. I need to just take clients and shut down. I don't know, every round of boot camp. No. And then you're right, that trauma response, and you have to kind of bring yourself down. And I think that's why it's so important to have both of your support, because I don't know how many times my automatic knee-jerk reaction as a group owner is someone's quitting or someone's leaving or someone's cutting hours and I have to jump into clients again. And Kelly would say, and where are you going to put them? And I would say, I don't know, I'll have to figure it out. And you kind of go into that response, but it really is about your systems are in place, your processes are there. You are going to just breathe and sleep and not take every client that comes through, the referral line tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is, I know Sonila will share too, but I was thinking about this, part of what Gina and I did was we didn't just look at this, we got on the line with her bookkeeper, right? And we looked at the bigger picture, looking at the actual numbers of this. And that was part of the settling of even someone external from the process. And there's another client, Tabby, who's a group practice owner, who again would have something happen. And I'm telling you, Tabby has convinced me, truly convinced me several times that her business was everything had gone wrong and money was not happening. And it was the end of the world, only to have her get on the phone with the bookkeeper and the bookkeeper be like, no, you made $10,000 of profit this month. I don't understand what's going on. Because sometimes, especially if we do have money trauma, if we have these other experiences, sometimes we can create a narrative that's not based in truth, right? So this is the other part too. We have to kind of get back into the truth of our body, and sometimes we have to get into the truth of the numbers of what I built up in my head that oh, this means everything is terrible. It may not at all be connected to reality.
And I think what's interesting too, when you have a group practice, my experience in coaching many group practices is that it activates family of origin stuff like no other. When you're solo, it's one thing. It's all internalized family. We call it FOOBs, family of origin bullshit. I think, I don't remember who coined that. Chris Boxman.
I think Chris did.
Yeah, Chris did. And then when you add a group practice, that whole Carrie Ann, like what she was saying about like, oh, they're leaving me now, I have to take this on. That's a family of origin kind of thing. And it gets played out more intensely when you're a group practice owner. It really does. And it's an opportunity for healing, of course, and working through those things in another lens. But I think it's really, really common. Edna, go ahead and post your questions. Keep asking questions. So Neela, were you going to ask any, you were going to speak? I think you had something to share.
Oh no, yeah. Regarding, freakouts, I think at the beginning, I definitely considered Blue Cross Blue Shield because I started out of network only many times. But it's also so important. It's such a difference between working for yourself by yourself versus with a team, because it's also like, who do you attract, right? To me, what I've noticed is the more work I do with myself in terms of the trauma, or what kind of person do I want to be, or what kind of family of origin did I have, what can I keep, what can I let go, the healthier that group practice is, because then you lead by example. You hire people that they're not talking to one another or gossiping. There is a trust in that setting where people can kind of like feel freer. We have a diverse group with clinicians and clients as well, and so I want the brown and black clinicians to speak up and be able to kind of say like, look, this is how it feels for me, and this is how it feels for me. And we know that some folks, some clinicians have more privilege, including myself, looking white. So it's huge, like that mentality of having to work with yourself. And like, is this person leaving me? And what does that trigger? Is it a rejection from the past versus really this person should leave in the first place because they want to do their own thing, or they might not be a good match, or that's the logic speaking. But the emotional part is real. And for me, what has been inspiring is that, again, a lot of work with myself, but also this team, like the two of you have been an amazing force of helping. When someone is disabled, you're like, okay, not only breathe, but Miranda, sometimes I worked closely with Miranda lately, Kelly, so no offense to you, but she goes into my website. She goes into my website and she does her magic. And I'm like, whew, I was stuck. I thought that this web page was going to fail, and all of a sudden it's fine. So yeah, thank you for everything.
We don't take offense. If someone like
I wouldn't either. I'd be like, good.
Work with Gina more,
It's all good.
Kelly, did you have a question?
Yeah, let's hear it.
Kelly's just joined.
Welcome.
Me? No, I've been here.
Do you have a question?
Yeah. So I hear all these people saying how they have all of these clinicians working for them. In my area, there's, everybody seems to be advertising and not being able to find clinicians to work for them. So how do you get people?
Yes.
I see Gina laughing.
Yeah.
I
Neela,
have struggled, but I will wait.
Go ahead, Neela.
I mean, this has been my experience. I usually, I found some luck on Indeed, where a lot of people were applying, but usually I go with the word of mouth. I asked a lot of my friends if they know someone that's in the community mental health that wants to branch out. And anytime I hire someone, it's not a full-time, it's usually you can make the transition. It's worked out really well because some people just don't want to leave right away. And they also don't believe me when we say we work with out of network, the fee is high, you can make good money. They're kind of like, are you sure? So skeptical. But I usually ask people around. And so 3 people that we've hired are the ones coming from my close friends that they know them through work. And they know the work that they do, and they're trusted individuals. They have good morals, good values, because you want to be protective of who you hire.
I also want to speak to those, Neela. How do you stand out as a group practice? You're very intentional about your diversity and inclusion and equity work that you do. You're very clear about the culture that you're creating in your practice. So I think there's a lot of group practices can be like mills where they just like churn and burn. And then you can also create something it's sort of like what we teach in terms of marketing to clients, really standing out and what makes you unique. Carrie Ann has a full insurance-based practice. So Neela's fully cash. Gina, you're hybrid, right?
Mostly insurance.
Mostly insurance.
Yeah.
So when you have insurance, the margins are really, really tight. I don't know if Carrie Ann and Gina want to speak to that too. About how you've been, Carrie Ann, you're hiring 3 new full-time. So how'd you do that?
So what I did was, and this, I will say initially it ebbs and flows. There will be times where I think you might, be inundated with applications, and then there's time you kind of have to really get out there and do community network, word of mouth. I've offered incentives to current staff if they have a referral, to bring into the practice. The 3 new people that I recently hired are very new therapists that are like just getting licensed. So what I did was I made a conditional offer that if they pass their test, I will cover the test fee if they commit to 1 year of full-time employment. And I found that that was really helpful. And I think too, just, being clear in the interview process on, how organized we are, how we have processes set up, how, I'm able to offer, some PTO and other, benefits to them has been really helpful. And I think just being available to answer a lot of their questions, because there's a huge piece of anxiety when you're like leaving agency, world and coming into this world. So really kind of helping with that. And we have done a lot of onboarding using, the Trello boards, having videos for new hires to review, going through that process and kind of really just bringing them on and supporting them weekly and not just throwing them into, the mill.
So we're like 98% insurance based. And I have full-time and part-time employees. All of my employees receive benefits. They all have paid time off. They all have sick time. My full-time employees have full medical. We have life insurance. We offer an education stipend that is way higher than it should be. Way higher than it should be. We cover their liability insurance annually. We have weekly supervision meetings. Our onboarding is basically a 6-month process. I have a clinical director at my particular practice, and so she provides all of the onboarding and all of the ongoing support for the first 6 months. So they're meeting weekly with my clinical director while also onboarding. And then once they start doing their clinical work, they have the weekly supervision that we provide for the entire staff, plus they have a weekly meeting with our clinical director. And then I'm always available for additional consultation if necessary. So with all of those things in place, we've become known as a very caring, supportive work environment. The last 4 hires have all been agency clinicians who have decided they are done with being chewed up and spit out and are coming on board. And so much like Carrie Ann was talking about, it's a transition. No, Sunila was talking about it as a transition and bringing them on in transition. And so they're working part-time for me, part-time at their job. The problem, it's not a problem, but the problem with coming on board in my particular practice is that I need 6 weeks to fill you up to full-time. So the transition can be very quick if they want it to be that way. And I think that proves to be scary because they're going from we don't typically do salary until someone's been with us a year, and then it's an option. They don't have to take it. It's a fee for service position. So they get paid for the number of clients that they see in a week versus having X number of dollars every week that they can count on. And so that is really where we spend a lot of time making sure people understand. The other pieces that I found are helpful in hiring is being sure that we're comparing apples to apples when we're talking to people. What does it mean to have a salary at an agency versus what it means to be a fee for service in private practice? And then talking about what it means to be a contractor versus a W-2 employee at a private practice and why those numbers don't look the same either and what those differences really mean. And that has been super helpful in getting people to at least understand what it what it is that we offer versus 1099 practices offer versus being employed by a hospital or an agency.
You'll also find, I think, Kelly, if amongst the group practices, they're all looking at the market and the landscape and where they can stand out. And one thread that is common amongst all of them is the intention that they put behind who they add and the kind of culture that they're creating. Because once you do that, then you become known. So like some models are in business school, they go with full salaries. Some have some salary, some hourly. But we have people joining group practices because of who owns the practice, and they want to learn from that practice owner, not about business, but about their clinical skills. They want the EMDR and they want the trauma training, or maybe they're wanting the flexible schedule, or maybe they're wanting, so you're thinking about who are the right fit. And often I know everyone says like the market is tight, and it has been for some people, but we've been working with them to find, okay, where do I stand out though? Like Robin Branham, she's one of our business schoolers, realized it's not health insurance that made her stand out. She offers student loan reimbursement. Like she's helping them pay off their student loan. They want that far more than healthcare in her area.
Yeah.
No one else was doing that.
And they wanted student loan, and they wanted to learn about the way that she works in particular.
Yeah.
That like the kind of supervision, the kind of training she provided, the kind of work that they were doing was the kind of work that they really wanted to be a part of. And I think sometimes we really forget that the clinical piece, having real clinical support, having a certain amount of like clinical, I'm going to say autonomy, but it's not even about autonomy. It's like trust that like, I support you and I understand, and I trust your clinical judgment. I want to train you up as well. But like, if you say this person isn't a good fit, I'm not going to shame you for that. I'm going to say, let's figure this out. Maybe there's something to change. We'll refer them out. I'm going to support you in that. I'm not going to say, well, you got to take what you can get. And like, these are your clients. So here it is. It's this place of like, what does it really take for this person to go in and say, I really love my job. Like, I really love my job. And with all things being equal, right? Even if, let's say you're an insurance-based practice and like, you're not paying after benefits and everything else. Let's say you were paying it equal to an agency, right? It's not usually the case, but could be you were paying equal to the agency, just the quality of life that you could provide. And then being able to like set a schedule that was doable. Maybe they're moving from working 40 to 60 hours a week salaried at this agency to working for you and being able to get that same amount of income in 32 hours a week, and having one day a week off for their family and to be able to make appointments and like do life. Maybe it's just that like, oh my gosh, I like really like my clients. Like this feels so good. Like there's so much that happens in that. So I think that's the piece. And I think we often don't describe that in our marketing messages. We're just like, here's our thing, but we don't describe what it's like to be with us.
Carrie Ann.
I think reminding them too, like you said, Miranda, is like some of the offers I've made are close to their agency salaries, but I have to remind them this is based on a 28 to 30 hour week. And you don't have all of the other, stuff. And I think that's helpful too, is perspective around, my clinical supervisor, she was part-time for me for 2 years. I promoted her to full-time. Her full-time is 20 clients a week and 5 supervision hours starting out. She's making more than she was full-time at her agency job. And now she's home 2 days a week with her 1-year-old twins. So like, and for me to be able to say to her, you know what, come to me, let me know what you're making at your agency. If you're comfortable, I'll see if I can match that, and come to find out, I matched it and then some for her. And here she has half of the amount of responsibility as a supervisor for me than her full-time agency supervisor job. And it's been great. So I think, just like you said, reminding them that their way of life is going to change, and reminding them, flexibility is so important. I don't know how many times I wanted a Friday off at an agency, but I couldn't take it because everybody wants Friday off, or everyone wants the holiday week off. But, there's a lot more, I think, just flexibility in hours and time, where you will find yourself sometimes not even wanting time off because you have enough.
Yeah. Is that helpful, Kelly? I saw you're taking notes. Do you have other questions, or do other people have questions? Like, we're here for it. If you want to raise your hand to do a verbal question, or if you want to post your question in the chat, like.
One of the things that came up, Edna, you're in business school, so you can always post and get your questions answered, and we'll provide feedback and help you along your path. But one of the questions you had posted was around what's the percentage of the insurance fee allocated to pay the employees? And so we have that huge spreadsheet, and we did a training last week that was brand new, that went over all the different numbers that you need to know and why we are so, like, it's important that you pay hourly or salary instead of percentage wise. But if you look at just flat out as a rough estimate, if you go over 40-45%, you're going to find yourself really kind of the profit margin is going to be too slim. And so, but there's a lot of different factors to consider, because it could be, you got to look at taxes, expenses, and everything. And that's why that spreadsheet is there, that'll show you kind of what you can afford to pay somebody. And, this is a conversation that I've had with a lot of group practice owners, is that they want to pay more. Well, then you need to charge more or get off panels or negotiate with insurance to improve the rate so that you can pay better as well. But sometimes it's not a money game. I want you to hear this, that not everybody is like, money does not solve everybody's problem when it comes to finding a job. Sometimes people also want quality of life, a safe work environment, the ability to thrive and learn and grow. You offer so much more than money. And I do think it's important. Don't get me wrong, but
we're all about sustainable, livable wages. Like, we're all about that.
But also we want you to be offering so much more than that, because this, as a group practice owner, you're making an impact on the field. And this idea that we're the worst paid master's degree, you can either contribute to that data, or you can start to influence that data and change it, right? And really, of like holding a higher standard of what quality care looks like. I've had lots of group practice owners have to have the conversation. We don't just say yes to everybody, right? And really, like, hey, your caseload's getting kind of high and you have a lot of trauma cases. Holding a higher clinical standard, changing the way mental health care serves in your community are things that really, as a group practice owner, you get to own. And that's pretty amazing. Edna, what did you want to ask?
Can I?
Yeah.
Okay. Hi.
Hi.
Actually, I found both of you by doing some research on a training class that I wanted to do for clinicians, because I came to private practice, by not really being a clinician myself. I was more always on the administrative, part of it. And even my schooling was on the business part of it. So I had the business piece. And, but when I got into private practice, I had to become a clinician, because that's the way, I had to kind of like really make the money until I can build the practice. But unfortunately, stuff happened, and I ended up, really being stuck doing the clinical piece, and I wanted to transition. So I wanted to offer a training. So when I saw your class, was like, everything you're saying, that's what I wanted, I have seen it, clinician burnout, I was burnout, even as the administrator. I felt powerless, helpless, because we were talking about trauma and we were traumatizing the people working for us. So I wanted to do something different. But here's the thing, and thank you again for last week, because last week really was an eye-opener for me, because I was started, to think about transitioning from insurance to cash. But I want, I'm in a point in my life, I want to grow the group practice and do some training and do all that. But I have all your program and it's great, but there's so much information. And I was like, I don't even know where to start.
Right.
So,
and that's where you can always just post and say, here's where I'm at. I don't know where to start. And then I would say, Edna, I want you to do this lesson first, and then come back to me and tell me how it goes. And then you're going to do this one. And that's where in business school, you can get that personalized, we have the roadmap. I want you to follow that roadmap, and then we keep posting along the way during the live working session. So I can say, hey, skip that, right now I need you to do this,
Yeah. Because I think this is the piece too, is like, we're trying to replace the income. Like, what would be the most direct place, right? You're in the place of like, hey, I'm getting some income from clinical work. I don't want to be stuck here. I'm going back and forth between group practice and doing this training program. What if I was to do this training program? What would that really look like? And we have the calculators for the training program, and even the regular calculator that we have. If you got nothing out of that process, maybe you look at it and you go, well, the hourly doesn't make sense, but what you'll see is that we'll get clarity on what your gross income needs to be. So we'll look at the gross income, we'll know what you need to be bringing in monthly, and we can use that to then create the training program. Well, how many people would I really want to be bringing into the training program? What does that really look like? And for us, of course, we want to hear more about the specifics of the training program so we can give you some more specific advice. And this is one of the reasons why we love the working sessions too, is because yes, everything's in there, but sometimes it's like internally we're like, well, what about this? And I have this or that option. We're really good at looking at the numbers, but also trusting our intuition, right? I talked about Marcella earlier. Did I talk about her this time, or who knows?
I don't know.
At some point I talked about Marcella, maybe that was at the last one, where she came to us to start a course. And in her particular place, her caseload was so large, it didn't really make sense. She didn't really have the time to do the course. And so she ended up creating this like amazing virtual group practice that has all of these employees all over California. It's amazing what she has done. And now she finally has a caseload where now she can launch the course, and she's doing the training programs, and she has the business to support it too.
I think about like Sonila. So Sonila could have come to me and said, hey, I want to start a group practice and a nonprofit. No. And I would say to Sonila, you have time. Let's pick the first thing first, right? Get the group practice going, pull yourself a little bit out of it to create the space, then for you to do the nonprofit or the course or whatever, right? So it's really understanding your circumstance, and then how do we do this in a way that you don't burn out? But every time we add an arm to the business, there's this like crunch period that you will feel, right? I think about Carrie Ann when she pivoted to moving from contractors to employees. It's like, or when Gina bought the building, there's this initial crunch of like, oh God. And then, because you're turning a corner, think of how it is to turn a corner. You got to kind of like, and then you can open into the new space. And so that it's sort of like, what corners do you want to turn first so that you're just never getting any breath in between, so you can pace yourself. That's the other thing too. So if you have all these things you want to do, because many of us are creatives and we love doing tons of things. And sometimes it's not your business that you need to be doing that in. You just need that in your own life to fulfill you. You don't have to monetize everything, but let's say you want to do a lot of things. It's beautiful, but how do we lay a roadmap that allows you to do it well and to preserve yourself and your well-being through it?
Yeah. And I don't think this is the case for Edna, but I know there's some of us that sometimes all of these diverse ideas are escapism because we've created something that like we don't love and is not workable. And so instead of fixing the thing that's right in front of us, we're fantasizing about the online course, or maybe I could do a podcast, or I'll become an Insta famous or a TikToker or something like that. Not that there's anything wrong with any of those things, but if they're an escape from this business and life that you've created that you don't love, that's not going to work for you. Let's create a life that you love, and let's create the next step, not as an escape, but just as like a next step because you're really excited and you just know. And this is one of the things that we do a lot with clients, where we'll say like, okay, so let's put that in the parking lot while we fix this thing, fix this first, right? Or fix this next. And then suddenly like you go back to the parking lot 3 months, be like, oh, there's some space, and be like, yeah, I don't remember what that was, or I don't even like that anymore. Or you're like, oh, it's been 3 months. Like, yes, I'm so excited to get to that. that's how you want to feel 3 months later. If you don't feel like that 3 months later, if you're like kind of confused or you're unsure, that's a great sign that that was just a shiny object that wasn't going to do anything for you.
Yeah.
Gina.
I had this experience, and Kelly talked about not monetizing everything. Like sometimes I think because we're in that place of being an entrepreneur and being creative and making our own paths, we sometimes keep it simple stupid. Like sometimes that's the process. So I wanted to bring in provisionally licensed clinicians, and I turned it into this entire process of needing to create a training program and all the things, right? And then I talked about it with a couple of other business school colleagues, and I think Miranda, and everybody was like, why don't you just offer it as a position? I was like, oh, okay, yeah, that could work too. So sometimes we get in our own way around some of this stuff when we're being creative. And I just want to say, sometimes the straightforward path is the path.
Yeah, it can be easy, right? This
Yeah.
theme that's been coming up in my own life as well. Like it could be easy. And it's funny, even I will say this, and some of you may resonate with this. I had this realization basically in therapy, and the realization initially was maybe it can be easy. Do you know from like even that point, it took me a couple of months before it moved from maybe it could be easy then to it can be easy. I couldn't even say it can be easy, which isn't even, it is easy. I had to move from maybe it can be easy to it can be easy to it is easy. Like there's a whole process there. So if you're in that place of like, wow, everything's feeling really freaking hard, right? Sometimes we have to like open up our awareness to, oh, maybe it can be easy. Maybe this hardness, maybe it is just a corner turning, but like maybe this is a sign that like this is harder than it needs to be. And how do I find the ease? Maybe it's my reaction to the corner. This is so scary. Or maybe it's just like, oh no, like I'm trying to turn this corner at 90 miles an hour. Yeah, that's a little dangerous and you might spin out. Like that's pretty intense, y'all. So like, let's figure out this space and get some perspective.
And I do think that with time, those tight turns get easier in the sense of like, oh, I've been here before. How can I do this a little differently so it doesn't wreck my sleep and my gut and all the things? And then the next time, that's that fear. And it becomes more externalized and more of like, okay, this is my process. And then it slowly falls away and you don't need it any longer. Joy says, you just read my mail. I'm in provisional licensure, filling up, teaching at my church and trying to write an online program and drowning. Yeah. So, it's a lot. So I know we have a few minutes left before we go into our general Q&A time, but what question do you want to ask them for their final?
So I want to ask this question for the final, since we just have a few minutes left, which is if there's somebody who was where you were before you found business school, who is like thinking, I don't know if this is going to help. Like, I don't know about this. Is it worth it? Is this really going to work for me? What advice would you have for that person who's like on the fence and just isn't sure if this could be the thing?
Are you worth it? That's what I would say.
Are you?
And then that will open the door for, because I think for me, I didn't think personally I was worth it, or I was like putting other people in front of myself. And I do think that a lot of women in general do that, or people that are excited to help. But if you're not helping yourself, and I know this is going to sound cliche when you put the oxygen mask, and I have 2 babies and I'm like, oh my gosh, how can I put my oxygen mask? Right now, I have no guilt whatsoever when I go out or when I leave my kids with a sitter, because I say, when mommy's doing well, you're doing well. And that goes the same way with the practice. And then someone actually opening the door to having their own private practice, because I think that the dilemma for me, at least, have been like, am I worth it to actually have all this? So it was a subconscious way of holding me back. And then now that I have all these opportunities, my life is day and night. I feel a lot more open and I'm able to enjoy everybody, and including myself.
I love that.
Yeah. So I love that question. Am I worth it? And I will just say, you are worth it. If you need someone else external to say that, you have been called to this profession. Like this does not happen by accident. You have spent hours and years of your life. You have a heart for this. Like you are worth it, whether it's us or somebody else, like whatever your dream is, like you are friggin' worth it. Like it's in there for a reason. And the more that you cut off from that intuition, the more you cut off from your compass, the more depressed, anxious, burnt out, frustrated, miserable, disconnected from your family, all of the things, the more spiritually deprived you will feel. Like all of the things start to happen when we stop listening to our guides and our people and all the things and our internal things. It just is a mess, y'all. Like it does not work.
Carrie
Okay.
Ann.
I would say, once you admit you are worth it, because you are, the important piece is not only are you gaining, life for yourself, you're also gaining a huge community of support. I mean, I have met colleagues and friends and, having the support of Kelly and Miranda on a regular basis. It's just important to know that all these people are here cheering you on, helping you, supporting you. And it's pretty amazing because it really does, it just opened up my heart. It really just opened up my heart to kind of receive all of this and know that, all these people are here to support you and they're with you. And it's a really fun community and it's a really loving one.
And we've gotten the beauty, like I've gotten to meet Carrie Ann and her kids and her husband. She's come to visit and give us a hug in this office and all the things. Like you get to have these people that are part of your support network, like all over the country and all over the world, that you can say like, hey, I'd like to come and like meet you. People will be delighted to see you. And then you can just, it's a business trip, so you can write that off.
Some people do that. They do road trips and then they check to see where business schoolers are along the way. And then that way they meet with colleagues and write it off.
Do all the things. Gina.
I would say, as scary as it may be to make the investment, it's probably the best scary decision you'll ever make, because it ultimately leads to a place of calm and satisfaction. And it also gives you, like Carrie Ann said, this incredible community of support that, I mean, Carrie Ann and I don't live that far away, even though she's in Connecticut and I'm in Massachusetts, and we've met in the middle for coffee. Like that's just the way, which I didn't write off, but anyway, but it just opens up so many avenues for you because you learn from other people, you learn from Kelly and Miranda, and you also learn about yourself in ways that you just can't do alone. Having the community, having the support, and knowing that it's always there just gives you an opportunity to be vulnerable and then learn from that vulnerability that I don't think you can do kind of independent of the group. So that's what I've learned. And I remember making that payment and being like, oh my God, this is like 2 months worth of salary. Like, can I afford this? It's the best investment I ever made.
Which is crazy, right? You're like, you've got 4 employees, you got a group practice, you're making $15,000 to $20,000, and you had a full caseload at the time. Like all the things, you're literally paying people to work for you. Like, it's just a crazy experience. And now to be like, oh yeah, easy peasy.
I want to say thank you to our business schoolers who have shown up and shared their stories. Thank you for being real. Like we don't sugarcoat this that, hey, in 6 months, I went from 0 to 7 figure, no, this is a journey. It's a lifelong journey. We are here for the twisty turns, the rough patches, the humanness that comes with being a business owner. And I appreciate all of your vulnerability and just being honest and opening up about some of that. And also I just love that I've seen that we've gotten to watch you grow. I get little chills. Jennifer, I'm in boot camp and tap, and it's still so helpful for me to hear about other people's success. Oh, I'm so glad. So everyone has shared their appreciation. Thank you all for being with us. Sending you much love. See you in business school.